We are sovereign. We, the people, are sovereign, certainly in a democratic society. At least we should be. At least that's how I understand it. And maybe you understand it slightly differently. Maybe you don't even know what sovereignty means. Let's have a look. I've just looked it up on the internet. I was looking actually because I'd much rather look in an old dictionary, but I found that my dictionary is escaping me. So I've had to resort to the internet. But anyway, sovereignty, it says here, is a political concept that refers to a dominant power or supreme authority. In a monarchy, supreme power resides in the sovereign or king. In modern democracies, sovereign power rests with the people and is exercised through representative bodies such as Congress or Parliament. So, the reason I say we are sovereign, and I think that governments forget this. Governments, I think that they have the sovereign power, the ultimate power, the control of everybody. But think of it like this. First of all, there were people like you and me. And society had no control, no one to look after them. And it was, well, what was it? Anarchy? There was no organisation, no administration. People had to get together and decide that they wanted a body of people in order to help them, to administer things, to organise things, to be an authority, to work out what the rules would be through perhaps something like common law, for example. And so, although there may have been a king, there would have been the people who have to agree to all of this, because it's all very well having power. You could be the king and you could say, well, I this is what I want to happen, or you could be a parliament. But unless people actually agree with it, it's not going to exist, is it? I mean, for example, you know what it's like if you're a dad or a mother and you're telling your son off and you say, now look, if you don't do your homework, you're going straight to bed, and they laugh at you, you sort of lose your power. And if you've got 3 or 4 kids, or a classroom of kids, or a football team of kids, or a stadium of kids, and you say, right, this is the law, I want you to all do this, and they all just laugh and say, no, we're not doing it, it's very difficult for you to start making them unless you start bringing in perhaps some police force. And then you make people do things against their will. Well, that's not a democratic society. A democratic society surely must mean that people will agree. And so these people put the authority in place. So it's the people who are the authority. At least that's how I would see it. I mean, that's how I think it must have come about. People first, and then a parliament and a government second, which means the government always has to be second to the people because the people put it there. Do you see what I mean? I've made some notes so I don't completely go off track here. But the trouble is, of course, I think we're in a situation in which governments now think that they have the ultimate power and they can tell us what to do and how to do it. And if we don't agree with it, it doesn't make any difference. So if they want you to, I don't know, take a medicine that you don't want, for example, they think that in the interests of the country, everybody should do it. But everybody should say, well, hang on a minute. Who's in charge here? We're asking you to administer, and you've given us a manifesto, and we've agreed to the manifesto to a certain degree. But when you start adding what? Ultimate power here, or special emergency powers there that none of us agreed to, when it's debatable whether we're actually in an emergency or not, I'm not sure that power should be the way it is. That's just my thinking. Now, I could be wrong, of course. I am very fallible and I'm wrong on a number of things. So that's how I think it should be. But now, if we're not happy with the government, let's say, I mean, we've got a lovely government at the moment, of course, and the people in charge are absolutely wonderful and benevolent. They tell us that, so we have to believe them, don't we? They've got our interests at heart. So, of course, we have to believe them. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that for some reason, that what they say, for the sake of argument, this is purely hypothetical, of course, but let's say that they all seem to be not very good at their jobs, for example. Let's say that they've mucked up the economy, for example. I'm just piling stuff in, which is completely spurious and unlikely to have happened. But if it had, let's say they had mucked up looking after the education and the police force and the health service, and so on and so forth, and banking, and were threatening, let's say, more control, that they wanted to streamline things and take, I don't know, something like some digital identity thing, so that we were able to be tracked and traced more than actually we would like, as autonomous human beings who want to have the ability to stay private if we want to, and not necessarily be spied on by so many surveillance cameras all over the place. Not that I'm saying that this government or any government that we have had has ever done that. Of course I'm not saying that, and I wouldn't say that. But hypothetically, let's supposing that there was a situation in which there was a government who was doing all of that sort of stuff. And let's say also, just for the fun of it, that the opposition was pretty much saying not only are they going to do that when they get in, but they're going to take it further. Imagine that. Well, that would be, I mean, it's hard to believe in a democratic society that anything like that would ever come about. And of course it wouldn't. Not if the people are sovereign, that the people who put the government there in the first place are the ones that really have to look at the governments and the opposition and say, look, you're accountable to us, not the other way round. That's how I think about this. So what we do have, if we didn't have a government or any of those things, as I say, there would be a bit of anarchy. So what we do have is we have this voting business, don't we? We have this poll in which we, the people, the sovereign people, can have a decision about who we want to lead us and control us. Now, in about 18 months or so, whenever it is, we're going to likely have another election. And let's say that these parties that I was talking about, these theoretical parties who screwed it all up, let's say they were hoping, ever so, benevolently and kindly hoping to get back in to do some more of that screwing up that they've already done. Let's say that they were putting forward a manifesto of, I don't know, complete load of old rubbish, probably, in this hypothetical situation that I'm saying, which has no bearing on the situation in real life at all. But if they were, I wonder if we would accept them, these governments that have mucked things up, and the parliament and all of that. And if we weren't going to accept them, what would we want? This is the crux of it. What would we want from our administrators, our authority that we, the people, the sovereign people, put into power? What would we want from them? What kind of questions? I'd be interested in your comments, because I think we've got an opportunity to do something here, because we are sovereign, and we've got an opportunity, the people versus the globalists. We've got an opportunity to make a difference. The people can make a difference. It's us making a difference for a change, not some spurious government bodies who pretend this. At least that's how I think in this theoretical example that I'm putting forward. So, for example, would you want a government that has links to, let's say, a global forums like the World Economic Forum? Would you want that? Would you want links to the woke agenda, in which we're questioning something, where universities are changing the way education happens with this very strange, touchy-feely sort of thing, as opposed to something that's based on merit? Perhaps would you want a government that was solely bought into the green agenda, that was going for net zero, for example? Something which on the face of it sounds great, but actually, when you start doing the numbers and you start working out that how are you going to generate enough electricity from things like wind and solar when we might have solutions all around us that can keep us going? Perhaps the transition to renewable energies, and in particular something like nuclear, we just need to take a little bit longer. Let's not penalise people and make the cost of living so expensive that it's going to put people into jeopardy. Maybe we want a government who is genuinely benevolent and wants to get on and do things and is prepared to take risks, but not follow something like the net zero and the green thing, and perhaps can accept that there might be some climate change, but perhaps the risk isn't as catastrophic as everybody makes out. Perhaps is prepared to look at all science, not just one particular type of science, and maybe be able to have much more of a public debate about it and get more speakers on both sides of the issue. I mean, that to me would seem like a government that I would certainly be voting for. I don't know about you. And specifically if you had problems with pandemics and health issues, whether there again there would be two sides of the coin, not one that an administration had decided is the only way, and then if they make a mistake with something and a few people get hurt along the way, that they're prepared to say, oops, we made a mistake, oops-a-daisy, we shouldn't have done that. We are prepared to listen to the other side and hear people and listen to those people who want to stand up and make comments about it. Because in a democratic society in which the people are sovereign and we are sovereign, then this is the sort of government that I would want to be voting for, not an authoritarian state, not one that thinks it knows best, not one that's going to talk down to me and treat me like an idiot, not one that's going to basically try and take away my property and everything that I own and then pretend to me that I'm going to be happy at the end of it. I'm not sure that's the kind of government that I would like. Fortunately, of course, we don't have that situation in this country, do we? We're very lucky to have such a kind and benevolent government that is philanthropic in many ways and is very keen to look after us. And so, of course, we'll have no problem when it comes to voting again, voting in those very kind people. But if we didn't want that, I think it's still the democratic right of the people, after all, we are sovereign, to be able to make their mind what kind of government. So you never know, there may be somebody out there who will wave a better flag than other flags and say, come and vote for us because we have all the answers that the people actually want. So I'm interested in your thoughts. What do you think? We are sovereign after all, and I'd be interested, who do you want to run the country when the time comes?